China is the leader of the axis of aggressors. Kim Jong-un is a cruel and ruthless despot, and he is backed by his nuclear-armed partners, Xi and Putin. Because right now, it is thinking about how to employ these capabilities on the Korean Peninsula.
You can just take that at its face, but I think our presence means switch in the early 1990s is that the defense space went. That continued progress has continued into the Lee administration as it was in the Yoon administration. And now,
let South Korea, who is not helpful to us, by the way, let South Korea, we only have 45,000 soldiers in harm's way over there right next to a nuclear force. Let South Korea do it. Let Japan do it. They get 90% of their oil from the Strait.
It is not helpful when American leaders speak of our alliances with derision. They argue that we must shift the burden of defense and deterrence from the United States and onto our allies in Europe and Asia. But there's a difference between burden shifting and burden sharing. We Americans have a massive stake in maintaining a favorable balance of power in both Asia and Europe. It remains a vital interest of the United States. Burden shifting implies abdication rather than collective responsibility. Alliances, by definition, are a two-way street.
President Trump's war of choice in Iran has resulted in significant military posture changes in the Indo-Pacific region and on the Korean Peninsula. There are also persistent and troubling reports that the administration is considering significant reductions to U.S. force posture in South Korea. You also made clear that U.S. force presence in Korea is not solely about North Korea.
I especially thank the Korean people for their continued partnership, hospitality, and commitment to our alliance. The Korean Peninsula is key strategic terrain, vital to defending the American homeland and advancing American interest in the region. My focus remains strictly on capabilities over numbers. While our presence is a baseline, it's imperative that we maintain focus on the precise capabilities that must be resident on the peninsula.
And in South Korea, we also had a very good meeting with the Lee administration. President Lee was very focused on reaching the transfer of OPCOM by the end of his administration, which is very supportive of Taiwan and would like to see. Nice to see you again.
지금 미국 정부가 기획하는 바대로 우리 한반도 방위는 이제 우리 힘으로 자력으로 하는 게 마땅하다라고 판단하고 있고, 그래서 군사비 증액뿐만 아니라 전시작전권 환수를 통해서 미국의 부담을 줄이고 우리가 최소한 한반도 이 인근에서는 우리가 자체적으로 동북아 지역의 안전과 평화를 지켜내겠다는 그런 생각을 가지고 있습니다. 철통 같은 한미 동맹이야말로 한반도 평화와 안정의 필수 요소인 건 맞습니다. 그러나 과도한 의존은 금물입니다. 전시작전통제권 회복은 조속하게 추진될 것입니다.
You talked about the importance of capabilities versus capacity, which was a point that we made to him as well. We need to continue to provide for the foreseeable future.
When we look at the things that we provide right now, there's no true analog to critical but more limited in Hangul. We're involved in conversations about this wartime OPCON and that it's a conditions-based transfer. I can't give you an answer on that right now, ma'am, because we have to continue to work to ensure that political expediency doesn't outpace the conditions.
the war with Iran, the DoD has withdrawn THAAD missile defense systems from the Korean Peninsula and has repositioned them to the Middle East. This move was opposed by the Korean government, in part because they believe that it basically weakened the deterrence against North Korea.
We've not moved any THAAD systems. So THAAD still remains on the peninsula currently. We are sending munitions forward, and those are sitting right now waiting to move. There were previous moves where radars were taken forward. This was in advance of Midnight Hammer.
And you expect them to remain there?
Sir?
And you expect them to remain there?
Yes, Senator, we do. We moved them around. I think that's what got into the information space.
Yeah,
I was dynamically moving those around so that I could then sequence them into Osan Air Base to prepare them to move the munitions. And that caused a big kerfluffle on the peninsula.
I know what China thinks about this. They hate it. One of the issues that we've often had in the past is the history of challenge between Japan and Korea. Sometimes moves in the defense space in one nation or the other can create some potential friction. I read the Korean statement about this Japanese announcement, and I thought it was sort of measured and generally positive.
I'll say that the trilateral cooperation between the United States, the Republic of Korea, and Japan continues to be on an upward trajectory. It's been the sign of great leadership both in Japan and Korea, and that continued progress has continued into the Lee administration as it was in the Yoon administration. And now,
two great nations, partners of our own, who are increasingly under threat and coercion from China.
Well, I think a lot of credit goes to Japan and Korea for this.
Politically, KJU is firmly in his seat. Through intelligence, what we find is less communication south with the government in Korea. There are no overtures toward peace from the north to the south, and we see increasing hardness, if you will, in terms of that relation. Every overture is rebuffed, and there are no more outreaches from the north to the south. The operational level, what they're finding is they're learning to become far more accurate with their employment of their fires. I think that's a thing when you see that Seoul sits some 60 miles south of the DMZ.
I think this is something we really need to sit up and pay attention to. When Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, it directly threatened the energy security of a number of our allies in the Indo-Pacific, Japan, South Korea. Does Indo-PACOM currently treat allied energy dependence as a strategic vulnerability?
Yes, absolutely we do. I affirm the ability of the United States increasingly to be a net energy provider also in the Indo-Pacific to escape the vulnerability of those key choke points.
Okay, and that's a key point too. I think greater U.S. oil and LNG supplies to our allies can reduce the leverage that any of our adversaries would have on those countries.
In Alaska, to have 150 to 100-year supply of clean burning Alaska natural gas. We have one of the largest, but it would help get that to our allies very soon. Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, the Philippines, they're all really interested in this project.
We could do the picking and choosing of our partners to link those things. All those would be greatly enhancing for security in the Indo-Pacific.
So this project would literally be like a virtual pipeline to Japan and Korea. You couldn't touch it.
And it would power economies, be a game changer.